roof over the back door, which was a recommendation, and fix the stairs so that the elevation is accurate, as well as the handrail on the side. Some details on the pent roof. I do know that you suggested that it would be a good idea to also have a pent roof on the side. My architect was not able to make it work. We do have a 2-foot overhang. I guess I may not also have pointed out, or I think it's coming up on a upcoming page. There'll be 2 feet, a 2-foot overhang from the siding to the end of the rafter tail. So I think that was a comment last time, that you were specific about wanting that to be 2 feet. So there is a 2-foot overhang there. Nothing new to mention here, although, of course, the handrail appears correct now, accurate. You had requested some more detail, an entire shot of the kind of the wall cutout, top to bottom. So architectural shingles on the roof, the exposed rafters, painted with the beadboard underneath. This is a block house. Then it's got lathing strips and then hardy board siding up to the exterior. You asked for some information on the window recess. And I actually just talked to my builder, and he anticipates that the window will be set 3 inches in. And I know some discussion about the stucco on the base of the elevation, which will have a smooth stucco finish. Just a little better breakout of that exposed rafter tail, the beadboard underneath. And that's where we show, I know that was a concern, that we have exactly 2 feet. I don't know that you really want to look at this, but that's the elevation, and of course we mirrored it, flipped it, and it's accurate at this time. I know there was some discussion about our block face average, so I did not show this the first time, but I do want to mention this. I did measure the houses on the street, the entire block, and we're actually sort of used to doing this from, we build in the East Tampa overlay, so I very commonly measure the block face average. And then in this case, block face average from the front of the porch to the curb, and then I use the survey to sort of subtract and come to the 13 foot 2 inches from the property line to the front of the front porch is the average on that block, and that's how we've set this house. I just put a few houses up, the adjacent houses on the street. You can see we're estimating 24 inches out of the ground, 24 inches out of the ground. It's about maybe 18 on that one. 24, 24, 24, and similar. So we're suggesting 24, the house should be 24 inches out of the ground to match the surrounding houses on that block. Nothing to update on the materials, but I do have just a few. I showed this last time. Wood windows and doors, craftsman style. Again, some fixtures. I think there was wanted some clarification on fixtures, so I put some hardware, a light fixture, and just the architectural style asphalt roof shingles. I had showed stockade fence on the side last time, a picket fence in the front, and rail detail, the same detail that I showed last time. And just the window details that I showed last time, which is actually taken from a recent house in the neighborhood that I think is done exceptionally well just down the street. And then again, the concrete pavered ribbon driveway and the colors that we'll use provided by Ron Veal. That concludes the comments that I have. I guess maybe I could mention a few things. If we're successful in obtaining approval today, we'll submit for permits. Maybe that'll take a few months, and we'll plan to build this house in the summer. Hopefully, COVID will have abated by that time, and we'll have volunteers back on our sites. We would love it if you would consider signing up on our website to volunteer and come out and help us build this house. And we would welcome your critiques as well when you're on the job site. So.
Thank you.
Good morning, Commissioners. Ron Vila, staff with Historic Preservation. Staff's finding that this application is consistent with the Ybor City Design Guidelines with the plans that were submitted in February 5th, 2021. Some site issues that are outstanding or require additional discussion is the drive out off the alley. Is that still there? It was indicated, I believe, on the site plan, but if he could elaborate a little bit more of the parking requirements, the location of the AC, and if it can be seen from the right-of-way, how he's going to screen the air-conditioned unit. And I wanted to touch upon that the ribbon drive, he showed some pavers, which is usually not a traditional detail that we support, but going through the review and natural resources comment, the proximity to the drive aisle to the tree has to be a sensitive solution. So in this particular request, that the pavers would be an appropriate path to go down, and this board does control colors, so we discussed the illusion of having it look like more of a concrete finish on that. Having said that, that concludes my portion of this, and I'll be here to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ron. We have the opportunity for public comment now. If anybody's here to speak for or against the project. Seeing none, we can ask questions, and we'll start on my right.
Thanks for the presentation. It looks a lot better than the last time you were here. I appreciate that. I think just addressing some of Ron's comments initially, could you talk, is the concrete drive from the alley still, that will be there per the site plan? And then the AC unit, I believe we talked about, was going to be on, I'm not sure, I believe, on the west side of the house, right? Is that still correct?
We moved the AC to the back.
To the back, okay. Oh, so I see the proposed AC pad now.
Yep.
Okay, yes. All right. Thank you. And then could you talk a little bit about the window trim details from the exterior as well for the house?
Yeah, I think we show 4-inch hardy board trim.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, fantastic. That's all my questions. Thank you so much.
Just one quick comment. I wasn't here on the previous presentation, but I'm looking at the plans now and the plans the last time. And the AC pad on the back, on the side plan, it's on the right corner, but on the floor plans, I think it's next to the steps, right?
You're correct. There's a variation there that
Okay.
you astutely observed. Yes.
But it'll be shrouded and
It'll be behind the house.
okay, to the back.
In fact, if you have a preference, I'll just circle it and I'll say, hey, this is where we want it.
This is a minor comment. That's all I'm saying. Thanks.
Okay.
Yeah, just a couple questions. So the ribbon drive here, it shows that you're going to have a brick paver. You showed us some concrete pavers. Is that what your proposed material for that, or are you going to use concrete there?
Cut gray, concrete style brick. I guess you'd call them brick pavers, but they have the gray color.
Okay, and that's for the pavers that you showed us. That's the only location that you're going to use those is on the ribbon drive, or are you going to use those because it says concrete drive in the back, concrete sidewalk, concrete sidewalk?
Yeah, I'm sorry. That is the only place we would plan to use it, and the real reason is just because of that tree.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind seeing like real, like the concrete pavers that look like bricks there. I think that's more appropriate for that area,
Okay.
which I think is one of your standard selections.
Yes.
I think you have a gable roof. This shows a hip. I mean, that's pretty minor, but you may want to clean that up just to get coordinated. I think that's kind of some of the issues that we faced last time is coordination between the floor plans and the site plan. No big deal on that. My only concern, if you could bring up the side elevations. We talked about the stem wall at the last meeting, and I think you've shown that condition here, but I think that's an awfully long stretch. Typically with these craftsman style or historic houses in the district, you know, on the front, you have the brick pilasters there for the covered porch, which gives it a real nice street front presence on your south elevation. But as you start going down this building, I think that needs to be broken up. Usually in the district, we'll have brick pilasters, and you can use a thin brick, similar to the same brick that you used here, just to break up that lower stem wall facade. Along that, I'd say maybe add three or four pilasters to make it more historically consistent, and everything else I think looks great.
I'm sorry, just for clarification, that would make it appear more like a stem wall? I'm sorry, like a piers?
Yeah, because typically these types of houses would have piers supporting the structure, and then you'd run the framing off of there, but you just need to break up that long linear stem wall at the bottom. You know, I'd put a pier at the end and a couple, just to break it up, and stucco in between the brick pilasters would be an appropriate historic treatment.
Got it, so,
Sometimes they do like wood lattice in between the brick pilasters, but I think that bottom stem wall just needs to be broken up a little bit. It's a long run. It almost makes it look like
I
a
understand.
trailer if you don't do it.
so
That would be my only concern moving forward to make this historic. Everything else, I think the applicant has picked up all the comments. Thank you for taking the time on the research for the floor height research and the front setback averaging. So that's excellent documentation. My only concern there is just breaking up that stem wall with a few pilasters in there to make it more historically consistent.
okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I have no questions. Thank you again for coming back and making the adjustments that we commented on.
Again, your microphone was on.
I have no comment. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for making the tweaks. And I want to pick up on what Commissioner Simmons was suggesting with the pilasters. If you can show, you know, here we've got the elevation. If you can show the section real quick, we can add to this a little bit and make it a little bit easier. So here at the finished floor line, you're showing the termination of the hardy board with a little bit of trim. Typically, if it was wood construction and if it was on piers, the way that we're alluding to, the hardy board of the clapboard would go down to cover, you know, lower than the finished floor. Mm-hmm. So I think that in this case, by incorporating the piers, you can bring the hardy board down another 8 inches or so to reduce the 2-foot stem wall that we're seeing. You know, it's 2'4" that you're showing there, and so we can reduce that by bringing the clapboard down a little bit further, and we can, you know, I think that can be part of a condition to work with staff on, you know, what are those details. But when you have a condition like that with you know, something that's referencing kind of a wooden building, it would go down and cover all the wood joists and that sat on those piers, and so the elevation would have more hardy board rather than stopping at the finished floor. That's just a little nuance there that picks up with what Rich was talking about as well. Other than that, I want to thank you again for listening to the concerns that we had, being willing to come back, and looking forward to hearing a motion for the project. Oh wait, you have to. Yeah, I'm skipping ahead. You have 5 minutes for rebuttal on what you've heard the commissioners discuss.
I have no further comments. I appreciate your input, including at the last meeting and today, and we look forward to building a house that blends in well with the neighborhood. It's an affordable homeownership home, and we would love to see you on site if you should have the opportunity to volunteer with us.
Great, thank you. And so we'll close the public hearing. And any further discussion?
No, I think with the applicant working with staff to finalize the paver selection and also the pier details, I think we should have a good project.
No additional comments.
I'll make a motion if you want.
Any further comments? We're good? Okay, motion.
Move to grant a certificate of appropriateness for the drawings and documents presented at this public hearing in BLC 21-46 for the property located at 906 East 19th Avenue, with the following conditions: that the applicant work with staff on the selection of the brick pavers for the Ribbon Drive and work with staff on the pilasters for the stem wall, spaced at an appropriate distance. Because based on the finding of fact, the proposed project is consistent with the Ybor City design guidelines of the City of Tampa for the following reasons. That's consistent with the Secretary of Interior standards and the design guidelines in Chapter 27 of the City Code.
We have a motion.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Does the applicant understand the motion and the conditions attached to it?
Yes.
Very good. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? I'm not opposed. Your tax.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, Commissioners. Ron Vila, staff with Historic Preservation. The next case this morning is BLC 21-52. This is for the address of 920 East 17th Avenue. The structure currently on that site was constructed in 2006. The zoning classification is YC8. The request in front of you this morning is for a vinyl fence that's already installed, and I'll show you some pictures at this time. So starting with the Sanborn map again, there was a historic structure on this site. This structure has been removed prior to me working here greater than 20 years ago. So this is the fabric as it is now. It is on 17th Avenue. Obviously it's in the shaded green area. And to the west or the left, it does have an alley that runs north and south. It's a 15-foot wide alley. This is an overhead shot of the area. Once again, you have 17th Avenue. To the west, you have 19th Street. To the east, you have 10th Street. And then the alley that runs north and south. This is the non-contributing structure that was constructed in 2006. This is the fence here that does meet City of Tampa code. For the height of the fence in the front yard is 4 foot or less. That's transparent. This is the vehicular gate and automobile storage down the apron. A little closer shot at the gates. Close up of the picket fence in the front. And then the privacy fence that's 6 foot high, which also does meet City of Tampa code. Just the termination point from the 4 foot high fence to the 6 foot high fence. Another shot of the fence along the alley. And then to conclude, this is what was here prior to the fence. This was a chain link fence that is also not allowed in the historic district by the Ybor City design guidelines. At this time, I'd like to call up the owner. If she needs to be sworn in.
And anyone else who wants to speak.
Everybody stand up and raise your right hand, please. That's going to testify. Thank you very much.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're providing this morning is the truth and nothing but the truth? Yes. Thank you.
Kamaria Pettis-Mackle from the City Attorney's Office. I just want to remind the commissioners there were letters received, in I think one in support and others in opposition. I just want to make sure the commissioners have that in their packet.
They do.
Is it okay to get started?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So, good morning, everyone. I am here today to.
Can you please state your name for the record?
Oh, sure. Quinette Ellis. So I'm here today to request a certificate of appropriateness for a new vinyl fence that I hired a company to install around the perimeter of my home back in November of last year. As Mr. Wheeler mentioned, my home is a block-style home that was constructed in 2006, and it is not a contributing historic structure. I purchased my home in March of 2018, and at that time there was a chain link fence that was in pretty dire need of repair. There were parts of the fence that were collapsing. There were other parts of the fence that did not connect. And it created a pretty good escape opportunity for my dog, who has sometimes been prone to wanderlust. But beyond that, it didn't really offer much privacy or security from the foot traffic that is generated by the soup kitchen that is located on the next block up. So after a few escape attempts, some successful, some not so successful, by my dog, and after being the victim of a few burglaries or a few thefts, the worst of which was a lawnmower that I had recently purchased that was taken out of a storage shed that was in my backyard, I decided that it was time to replace the fence. So I researched fencing materials. I weighed things like cost and the environmental impact of materials used for the production of fencing and things of that such. But I also had come to admire some of the other vinyl fences that were used by other houses in the area. So I've been, I brought in today, is that how that works? Some of the other fences in the neighborhood that also use vinyl material, and this is just a very small sample of other houses, just driving in walking distance around my neighborhood, just for you to review. Another one, and another one. I mean, I could give a whole presentation just about fences, but at any rate, I did admire the fences that I saw, that I saw being used by some of my neighbors. I do just have to say that when I decided to purchase my home, one of the biggest draws to my neighborhood was the historic charm and the unique personality that each of the homes have. I was very deliberate in my decision not to buy in one of the newer HOA communities. I feel like, in those communities, it can be a very cookie cutter experience at times. And I just like the fact that, all of the homes in the neighborhood have their own personality, and they're just as individual as, the people who own them. But I did not understand that, like some of the HOA communities, there are special rules that are very specific because of the historic district. So prior to having the fence installed, I didn't understand that there could be some backlash because of that. So to add to that, prior to receiving my violation notice from the BLC in February, I did not even know what the BLC was or that it existed at all, but now I know. So although the circumstances are not the most ideal for coming to know the BLC, I will say that it has created a learning opportunity for me. I really adore the neighborhood that I live in, and I would never intentionally defile it or disrespect it. So once I received my notice, I accepted my responsibility to understand the issue that was being presented, and I started to look for some answers. And I don't know, my voice is so shaky, I apologize. I decided to look for some answers, and I started my search by researching the Tampa, Florida ordinances. And so I guess in trying to understand things, my search kind of brought me here. So it's here in chapter 27 of the code, which covers zoning and land development under Article 6, Division 7, Section 27-29.1C. This section here. It covers fencing, and it states that materials such as, I'm just going to kind of paraphrase, materials such as wood, chain link, decorative wrought iron, vinyl, and other materials may be used for fencing. But it does go on to say that historic districts do have the ability to further regulate those standards. So that kind of led me to the point that we're at right now, which was to review the guidelines for the historic Ybor City area, which is the document that is available on the city website. So in this document, you'll see that in the language it says that you have to use appropriate materials and appropriate designs. The document provides some illustrations to give examples of what might be considered appropriate designs. And then it also includes a paragraph that spells out what would be considered appropriate materials. So I noticed in the document, it lists some specific materials not to be used. You'll see things like, you know, the cinder block and chain link and things like that. But in all the lists of materials that are there, vinyl is not listed. I noticed that in the document, it did point out some specific materials that had been permitted per the city code, which would include the chain link and even some elaborate ironwork. In that paragraph, it even goes on to make some specifications for wood, because again, in the city code, wood is a material that is listed as appropriate, but in the guidelines, it does kind of narrow down some specifics as it relates to wood. So because this document does not specifically address or prohibit vinyl, I did not believe that my fence posed any violation. Even, like I said before, I had no idea, but even after reviewing the document, I couldn't see that there appeared to be any violation. So that's why I'm here today, just kind of get on the same page and resolve this issue and just move forward.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Good morning, Commissioners. Ron Avila. Staff's finding that this application is inconsistent with the Ybor City Design Guidelines and what was submitted to our office on March 5th, 2021. Speaking directly to the design guidelines on page 76, the designs of the fences should be similar to those referenced in the guidelines. However, vinyl is not a material that is considered compatible with the Ybor City Historic District. Also, referencing page 76, use appropriate designs and materials when choosing a fence to enhance the building. Picket fences, simple wrought iron fences, brick walls, stucco walls, or fences of brick and pillars combined with iron are traditional for Ybor City. It does discuss, continuing on page 77, on the Ybor City Design Guidelines, in residential zoned areas in the historic district, the commission may consider approval of a fence material other than those recommended in these guidelines with the following stipulations. And there's two stipulations. Where like fencing materials are prominently seen from the public right-of-way, and where required uses or recommended fence materials would place an undue economic hardship upon the applicant. And that's referenced on page 3 in your staff report. As I stated, that this fence does meet City of Tampa code as presented. The challenge that we have is when the owners or agents call the city to erect a fence, no permits are required, but approval is still required. Ybor City has been a historic district for many years. I believe that the agents that are selling these homes are advising the clients that they are in the historic district. We've met with a lot of the realtors in the past, provided guidelines to them, so at the time of closing, they can provide these documents to the public, you know, in a fashion that is more upfront than going in this fashion. So I don't know if this was the case, and it doesn't seem like it was the case, but we do have an outreach program through preservation to the public. Having said that, that concludes my portion, and I'm here to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ron. We have the opportunity for public comment. I think somebody got sworn in to speak for or against the project, so now's your time.
Thank you. My name is Christina Jesmundo. I'm a resident and homeowner in the neighborhood. I actually support PVC fence in the Barrio Latino district for a few reasons. One is it looks better. It's cleaner and neater, and it lasts longer. And as you can tell, because the pictures that she showed are from before the area became part of the historic local district. So they've been around for a really long time. Most of them looked pretty good. So, and also for the fact that plastic wasn't around really in this capacity. So there's no way, according to the guidelines, that this would ever be appropriate because this material for a fence didn't exist. The other reason that I think it should be permitted going forward, which isn't necessarily what's being asked or presented today, although if this variance is approved, that could obviously set the stage for that. But I think it's very peculiar that our historic neighborhood, one of its defining features is that we do not allow vinyl fencing, and yet a few blocks away in East Tampa, all over Tampa Heights, everywhere else you can see it. And I think that's a really strange thing to separate our neighborhood when we have lots of other historic benefits and visual features that could distinguish our neighborhood. Rundown wooden fences are not really, I think, one of the ways that anyone would like our neighborhood to be recognized when you compare it to, again, just a few blocks away on 21st and 22nd, there's all kinds of new construction and all of them have vinyl fences. And the third comment I just wanted to make in support of this is that I don't believe realtors and homeowners are aware. And while the burden of responsibility should be on the homeowners, I am regularly reporting people in my neighborhood who are violating BLC code. I have a serious problem with that. But I think that the city and the BLC and historic preservation need to do a much more diligent job at educating people. And I'm talking about people who buy in the neighborhood, people who are selling. I don't think realtors know, and I don't think enough homeowners know. And the neighborhood association, of which I'm very active and have been a former president, does work to educate people, but not everyone gets involved with the neighborhood association, and it's frankly not the neighborhood association's responsibility to educate people about the BLC codes. So while I support everything that the BLC is doing, I'm happy personally to work with the BLC. I think that vinyl fencing needs to be reevaluated in this area, and I think it should be permitted going forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Any others to speak? Okay. So we'll have commissioners ask questions regarding the project, or regarding the CA.
A question to Ron. The applicant had shown some vinyl fencing on adjacent properties or within her neighborhood. Were those approved administratively or by a commission in previous hearings, or were those there before this area was designated historic district?
Good morning, Ron Vila. You're seeing this fence because it was something that staff felt uncomfortable approving that we haven't done in the past. We review fences on a weekly basis, and if they meet the criteria and the intentions of what we've done in the past, then we approve them. If you look here, if we could go back. To the Sanborn map, I didn't bring a specific illustration to show, but this used to be our northern boundary, which was Michigan, that is now Columbus Drive. It used to end on the alley, the block face, the northern block face facing Columbus Drive. Since then, the area has expanded to the north to 21st Avenue And this house was captured in that expansion that was approved by this board and ultimately city council. So a lot of the fences that were shown, I believe, were in this area prior to the expansion to the north. I don't believe any of the fences that were shown today are under a violation, which leads me to believe that they were approved, and meet city code prior to the area expanding to the north.
Got it. Thank you. No further questions.
I just have a quick question. In one of the opposing letters, there's a statement that, I don't know, the city, the commission needs to do a better job in informing subcontractors of this regulation. The person that you engaged to install the fence, did they make it, were they aware of these regulations, that they couldn't use vinyl or anything like that? Did they mention anything?
So I'm not really sure. We didn't really have those discussions. My best guess is that, like myself, just reading the language of the guidelines, I think it would be really hard to make a distinction that clearly says that vinyl isn't permitted, because vinyl it's not used anywhere in the language. It's very clearly spelled out in the city code, but when you reference the guidelines, it does not say. It almost feels like it's just kind of like a common knowledge thing, things that people just know because they know. So I cannot speak on behalf of the fencing company because I just don't know. I can only speak for what my experience has been, trying to understand, the issue that we're having today. So it's possible that they just don't know.
Understood, thanks.
I have a question for Ron. Ron, what year do you know were the criteria last revised in our guidelines?
The Ybor City Design Guidelines were established, the ones that we currently use, I believe, in the early 80s. We're in the process of revamping those criteria now, and we're going to provide this board a summary of the direction it's going. We have a consultant on board, and we're redoing the guidelines at this time. So this is an item that's going to be touched upon, as a lot of other items as well, to bring it, more current than the current guidelines that we have.
Yeah, that's what I thought. I just hate to see the last soldier shot by the last bullet in the last war, 5 minutes before the armistice. And I think that's what we're facing here. Just a comment.
My question is also for Ron. So when you went through your photo presentation, you showed us I can see the picket fence up front, which is 4 foot high. And then you can see the 6 foot fence, which is solid. Aside from materials, is the staff's concerned more with the solid 6 foot PVC fence, or does the 4 foot high? You kind of, that's a good. Well, either one of those. Because you kind of, I think if I heard you correctly, you said the 4 foot picket fence was appropriate, but the 6 foot high solid fence is not appropriate.
If I might have misspoke if I said that. The fence as installed meets City of Tampa code. The code states that in the front yard, if the fence is transparent, as this one is, the picket provides that transparency, it could be up to 4 foot in height. And then towards the rear, you can have a privacy fence, and City of Tampa code for the side and the rear behind the front yard setback can be 6 foot in height.
Okay, so, and it could be 8 foot, actually, in the district.
In certain zoning classifications, but in residential, we hold it at 6 foot.
Okay. So really the issue is the materiality?
Yes,
more
sir.
so than the height and the opacity of the fences?
That's correct.
And this is being discussed right now with the design guidelines updates?
We have a laundry list of items that are being discussed, and this is one of the bullet items, yes, sir.
Okay. I mean, vinyl, PVC fences are, you look at a lot of these wood fences that have gone up in the district within 2-3 years ago, and they're already showing signs of, growth and decay, and vinyl, you're not gonna have that issue. So it's a legitimate issue here. So thank you for clarifying.
I have no comments. All mine have been addressed by the other commissioners.
Kamaria Pettis-Mackel from the City Attorney's Office. I'd just like to clarify, just for the record, that the applicant is pursuing a certificate of appropriateness regarding the fence. There was one comment from a public comment about a variance request. Just to clarify, this is not a variance request, and the letters that were submitted in support or against the application also referenced a variance request. A variance request is not what the applicant is asking for. It's a certificate of appropriateness, and I just wanted to clarify that for the record.
And I decided on certificate of
Hold
appropriateness
on,
because.
hold on. Yeah, hold on. I was just clarifying something for the record. I wasn't asking a question.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So with the boundary having been extended in this property and others being incorporated into it, and fences usually being associated with staff level approvals, have there been other times where we've had to deal with this, or is this the first time the commission's seeing this for clarifications?
Question?
Yes, please, sorry.
You know, staff tries to get involved. We have a huge presence in the community. We try to nip these requests before it gets to this level. I think we're very proactive in our approach in all our historic districts. There are some that fall through the cracks, as this one did here. I'd like to address these, as I stated. You know, if somebody reaches our office, we do site visits. We go out and meet the new owners on site, discuss the guidelines and any short-term or long-term projects that they might do to assist them and provide some guidance. So, as I stated, I don't believe this body has seen a fence, and we try to resolve those prior to it getting to this point.
Understood. And touching on the economic hardship portion of what we've been presented, what would you mind sharing how much the fence cost to put in?
It was just shy of $10,000 for the installation.
How many?
Just shy of 10,000.
1 0?
10,000.
10,000.
Mm-hmm.
Wait.
Could I ask, cause I know you said you considered other options. Did you get a quote for a wood fence as well?
Yeah, so when the estimator came out to review the property, we discussed both options. My preference was for the vinyl, just for, like I said, I'd seen vinyl used by some of my neighbors, and as my other neighbor mentioned, just because of the upkeep and the need to constantly replace and repair the wood, I wasn't particularly keen on that, but I've never put up a fence before. I just heard through, other people discussing installation that wood does seem to be a cheaper alternative. But at the time, the pandemic was happening, and I guess it had a lot of impact on other sectors like wood and import of wood and things like that. So because of, I guess, the supply and demand issue related to that, it was spiking the cost of wood. So based on the estimate, the difference in price really wasn't significant enough for me to elect wood over vinyl. It was almost about the same.
Thank you.
Okay. The commissioners that have asked questions, you have 5 minutes to discuss any of the items that you've heard from this round of discussion. So you have a little bit of time for rebuttal before we close the public hearing and discuss the case and try to move forward with a motion. If you'd like to add to anything, yes. If you've heard anything that you'd like to add additional information to the record for.
The only thing, and I don't know if this makes a difference one way or the other, the choice to request a certificate of appropriateness versus a variance is only because certificate of appropriateness was the language that was used on the notice when I received it. So I thought that was what I would need for this request. That's it.
Okay. Well, we appreciate you sharing this with us, and so we'll close the public hearing and we can discuss the case.
Before you close the public hearing,
we're not closing the public hearing.
Can I have a question to Kamaria Pettis-Mackel? Does there any sort of difference, does it affect things in any sort of legal way, whether we give the applicant a variance versus a certificate of appropriateness?
Well, she's not asking for it. She
Okay.
didn't ask
All right.
for or notice for a variance. So you have to, we're here for a certificate of appropriateness, and that's regarding the materials that are used, and that's what a certificate of appropriateness is for.
Okay, and then if we grant a certificate of appropriateness, does it set up a legal precedent for future applicants to apply for a vinyl fence administratively through staff or maybe without our oversight, thing like that?
Kamaria Pettis-Mappa from the City Attorney's Office. So each application is taken on its own, and that's important to keep that in mind, is that each case has its own unique circumstances or factors to take into consideration. So if the commission votes, however the commission votes regarding this property is unique to this property and this applicant.
Okay.
So just keep that in mind. And again, as Mr. Vila has stated, staff takes up a lot of the fencing requests. And this applicant is only here because of a notice that she's received to address the materials that were brought to the city's attention.
Great, all right, thank you.
Now we'll attempt to close the public hearing. Although I think we probably could have had that conversation closed. But, so let's get the sense of the commissioners as we try to move this forward.
Yeah, so obviously I sympathize with the amount of money spent on the fence, and there's a reason why PVC vinyl fences are very popular nowadays. As I mentioned, like the upkeep, they last a lot longer. However, I'm a bit also uncomfortable maybe granting a certificate of appropriateness for a fence such as this that doesn't match the historic nature of which we're attempting to preserve. I do think we're sort of in almost at a tipping point, because I think there are things like, I think the front of the house with the fence where we could have a vinyl fence that looks a lot like a wood fence be acceptable with the future guidelines and that kind of thing as well. However, I think something like the 6-foot fence, which is completely opaque, which we can kind of see from the front, is not very acceptable, as was sort of mentioned by another commissioner as well, towards the historic nature of this district. I'm sure, is there a way for us to kind of kick this down the road until the future guidelines are enacted, and whether new materiality is sort of considered in the guidelines or anything like that? Just because we have just things like, like LVT now can look a lot like wood, right, for like flooring and that kind of things. And I think there could be a similar situation with vinyl fencing where they look like a painted, wooden fence in a lot of ways. But yeah, so those are sort of my thoughts at the moment.
Kamaria Pettis-Mappa from the City Attorney's Office. I just want to, again, in reminding the commissioners while they're going through their thought process of the criteria that's presented in the staff report on page 3 about the 2 alternative reasons in order to take into consideration the alternative materials for fencing. It's on page 3 of the staff report. That's all I have to say.
Thank you.
So I agree with Ron that this one fell through the cracks. Should have been caught earlier, but I do believe that there's a precedent for approval in the neighborhood, as you showed those fences. I actually drove by the property over the weekend and I saw that the surrounding properties near, they're all chain link fences. Some of them are falling over, so I think this adds to the streetscape, enhances it. I also believe, and I think again, it's a comment in here about, subcontractors that are installing these fences need to know what the guidelines are, and they need to be better trained, I guess. That's all.
I'd like to say that the fence looks great, and I've been in favor of these fences for a long time. But people close to me haven't been allowed to put them in because they're not required. But the question I asked Ron was, well, when was the last time The guidelines were reviewed, and he said the early 80s, which brings the witness, for lack of a better word, her statement that they weren't even around at the time. So it's been a matter of governmental neglect that they're not around. The fence looks great. It's a 2006 house. I believe it deserves a 2006 fence. That's not a problem either. And then I'm going to go back and touch a nerve that it wasn't just a couple of weeks ago, well, I'm sorry, it was a couple of months ago, that this board approved a blatant non-variance for a height difference in a building that makes a big damn difference to me, and it couldn't have been explained to me. And somebody said, well, we can do what we want to do, and we're doing it. And I'll drop it right there. Well, by the same criteria, I think we ought to do what we need to do, and that's it. If this were to break a dam and there'd be a flood of vinyl fences, that's okay. It's 2021, you know? It's been 30, 40 years. And these things are coming up everywhere. They look a hell of a lot. Well, we don't have to go through the merits of that again. So we've got a moral dilemma faced off with a legal dilemma. And sometimes the law is an ass. And we just got to that. That's all there is to it. I'm going with the moral situation. And you might have heard me gasp when I heard what the young woman here paid for this fence to do a nice job. How nutty would it be to make her take it down when there's nothing but chain link and the expansion of the district has her neighbors winning the lottery and she's going to get penalized. It doesn't make any sense to me. So I think based on the height variance down there on a block off 7th Avenue, well, that's just my feeling. That's what I'm going to do.
Thank you.
Yeah, I share the sentiment of my fellow commissioners that it's a tough decision, you know, because you have one thing that, okay, that material wasn't listed in the 80s as acceptable material, but, you know, then again, other materials that we use in our construction continually evolve, and we use newer and better materials. I mean, fiber cement siding, hardy board is one thing that was never used. I mean, you're always traditional wood, and at some point in time, we had to change that to allow the cement fiber board, which I think is a good use. Shingles have evolved, you know. So there's a continual update of materials to make better products. Specifically with this case, I think the application, they did what was appropriate. I mean, if this was out of wood, then the 4-foot, you know, opaque, transparent fence in the front is certainly appropriate, and the 6-foot high fence on the side yard, and I assume it goes around the rear maybe, as an opaque fence, it would be appropriate too. My other concern is the precedent that this sets for this district. So all of a sudden we're saying it's okay to use a vinyl fence for yards, and I think we might need to be specific. We don't want vinyl on houses for fencing materials or on the front porches. I mean, I don't think that's appropriate to go vinyl there, but I think here vinyl tends to be you know, a modern material that's durable. It holds up over time. It's easy to clean and maintain. It looks better over the long run than wood, even PT wood tends to deteriorate and lose its finish. Vinyl doesn't have that issue. So, you know, I think the installation of the fence as installed is appropriate. The use of materials, I think, you know, it's time to modernize here and say that this is an appropriate material to use as a fence. I'm just a little concerned about the precedent that sets, and it'd be like open season on vinyl fences for everyone in the district, which I have concern about setting that precedent. So I'm still, you know, I like wood. It holds up. It's timeless. It's a native material to the historic district, and I'm still kind of up in the air on this one, but, you know, I certainly think, you know, part of this board's purview is changing with the times as well and allowing materials that would be consistent if used in a consistent manner within the district.
First of all, I think your fence looks very nice. And it was confirmed earlier that other than the material, it meets all the other criteria. And I've listened to what all the other commissioners have shared in regards to their thoughts and tend to agree with majority of them. The fact that our design guidelines are being reevaluated indicates to us that they've been around for way too long and need to be updated. I would like to see us, you know, as far as color, to your point, I think you're right. At some point in time, I think they're going to come up with wood-looking vinyl. But in the meantime, I don't believe they have that. But to this point of several others, it's durable, it looks good, it lasts, it was rather costly. It is a tough spot to be in, but I also believe that we need to start taking a look at being able to move some of this stuff forward in doing that. And I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation. We appreciate the conversation. I think that this particular case, although it's, you know, unique to your house, is going to affect and inform a lot of the stuff that goes forward. So thanks for bringing it to the forefront. I appreciate you sharing the cost of the fence with us, because I think that you know, what we're talking about would be if we said no, it's inappropriate, you have to take it out and put another $10,000 fence in place. That's a lot of money to pay once and a lot of money to pay twice. So I appreciate you sharing that. I think that, you know, we do need to update the standards, and we need to update the guidelines. I agree with Commissioner Schiller, you know, with the notion that we'd hate to have this be the last bullet fired on a particular project, only to change it in the future. I think that going forward, and if this commission has the opportunity to participate in the, you know, in the reboot of the standards, that I think that there needs to be kind of a gradation of the standard where, you know, if the district keeps growing, it keeps absorbing pieces and parts. Like this is a 2006 non-contributing structure, and it has fencing that in scale, mass, and character is an improvement and a contributing factor to the neighborhood. It just has a material that isn't clearly defined in the guidelines. So we need to catch up with that. I think there's an opportunity there to, you know, allow portions of the district that have been expanded to have a little bit more flexibility than the core district, you know, to where we might make a, you know, the commission's concerned with if we say yes to your fence, we get them everywhere. Well, I think that we could be a little bit more nuanced in our approach to how we want to deal with that, because we've had the opportunity to watch decisions that we make regarding finishes of cell phone towers, you know, leave the district, and we have to consider how that affects, you know, the integrity of the district as well as the applicant. I mean, I'm of the opinion that if there's a little gray area here, that the benefit should accrue to the owner, to the property owner. I think that, you know, we've got some stuff that we need to iron out. If we're 30 years behind on what our standards are, we need to update them and make it more clear for everybody. But that's, you know, those are my personal opinions regarding that. So I think that we have perhaps some kind of consensus that we could form here as to what the motion would be. But please.
I'd like to throw one other comment in there. It was brought up several times, and I'm not sure how it can be addressed, but it was brought up several times in both the owner's presentation as well as the witness, I think we determined who that is. And part of that is communication. how are we communicating, or how is it being communicated to homeowners and property owners in the historic areas? I think the point was very valid, and I read through all of the letters that were submitted, the information that was submitted, pro and con, and people don't know that you have to go through the BLC. You know, people don't know that there's that process out there. How are we communicating to people that to homeowners and property owners that they're in a historic district and here's what needs to happen? And I think I would like to challenge us in whatever way I need to do that, Ron. How do we communicate with them? How do we start moving that forward so that we are a presence, and what we do and what the benefit of us is? Am I making sense? Thanks. You're all looking at me like a bunch of bugs.
I think, going back to Commissioner Schiller's point about, okay, the last bullet in for this, we've got the design guidelines being updated right now, and we're gonna have to take a position on this, or the HBC is gonna need to take a position on this. For this particular application, I think one of the things that kind of helps us without setting too dangerous a precedent that we're gonna say, hey, we're gonna allow PVC fences in the historic district, is on page 77 of the Ybor City Design Guidelines, that we can also state that, yes, this applicant acted without the knowledge of what's required within the district, but this would also create undue economic hardship upon the applicant to go ahead and replace that. So I think that's a strong policy here to say, yes, you made a mistake to install this within the district. It's not really allowed. $10,000 is an awful lot of money. I remember on my previous term that when we served, there was someone that built a shed behind a house, and it was like, they spent a lot of money to do that, and they didn't know, and you kind of feel for them. But I think right now, to help protect our precedent setting of this PVC fence within the district until the design guidelines are updated, I think the motion needs to include that the certificate of appropriateness is granted due to the undue economic hardship placed upon the applicant for having to redo this fence.
Is that your motion? Are you making a motion?
All right.
It was,
I mean, are we
What do you want?
okay, all right. I'm on a roll today.
Yeah,
All right, here we
if
go.
anybody wants to add on to that, that's fine, but I think that's a.
I mean, is that the only condition? Are there any other conditions?
I think that's good until we can control the design of the guidelines.
Yep.
Until that starts rolling out.
Okay.
I mean, the only thing I sort of have with that condition is that, although I think everything is as legal as informed as that, everything is just very specific to this case anyway, so that we're not really setting a precedent. But by putting that in, I mean, in terms of our rulings, it's just sort of like, well, the fact that we put that in is just kind of like, well, okay, maybe ignorance is the better way to go. Just sort of ask for forgiveness later, right?
No, Kamaria Pettis-Mackel from the City Attorney's Office. I just want to clarify, that's not a condition that the commissioner is asking to be included in the motion. That's what his basis will be for whatever motion he has. Okay. But again, this is the information that the commissioner was just speaking of. It's not, it's almost like a hardship to justify, if that's what your motion is, to approve the certificate of appropriateness. It's saying that the applicant is, you're acknowledging that the applicant has a financial hardship regarding the certificate of appropriateness request. Do you understand what I'm saying?
I'm not sure I follow, no.
You're on page 3 of the certificate of the staff report. Page 3 of the staff findings gives you 2 criteria in order to take into consideration, to consider approval of fencing materials other than those recommended in these guidelines, with the following stipulations. Those 2 stipulations, 1 or 2 or both, you could take into consideration in your thought process of whether or not you're going to approve a certificate of appropriateness. The commissioner is stating that in his opinion, a certificate of appropriateness could be approved because of the undue economic hardship upon the applicant. She testified that it cost her about $10,000 to build the vinyl fence. you understand what I'm saying?
But wouldn't that be in lieu of the recommended fencing materials? So since the two cost the same, would it not be, would that still make sense?
If you don't approve a certificate of appropriateness, she would be required to take it down. The commissioner is proposing a motion to approve the certificate of appropriateness for her to keep the vinyl fence because it would be.
Okay, so that's to keep the fence as opposed to just having built it in the first place.
Correct.
Anyway.
It's
Okay,
for
got
her to
it.
keep the fence and approve the materials that were used, because otherwise it would be an undue economic hardship on her to remove it.
Okay, that I understand. All right, thank you.
Move to grant a certificate of appropriateness for the drawings and documents presented at this public hearing in BLC 21-52 for the property located at 920 East 17th Avenue with the following conditions. That the fence material is consistent.
You're
The
not doing it as a condition.
We're just approving it, correct? We're
Right,
just
your
saying we're
basis
approving
for
it.
in your motion is that's, you're gonna use.
But I want to stipulate that as the economic hardship is the condition of the certificate of appropriateness.
It's not a condition, it's the basis for your motion.
It's the reason?
It's
So
the reason
can you
to
define it as
justify.
the reason?
Okay, well, okay, then we'll strike that. You want me to start over?
Yes.
Okay. Move to grant a certificate of appropriateness for the drawings and documents presented at this public hearing in BLC 21-52 for the property located at 920 East 17th Avenue, because based upon the finding of fact, the proposed project is consistent with the Ybor City design guidelines, because the use of the recommended fencing materials, replacement of the fence would place an undue economic hardship upon the applicant, and that this fence is consistent with the design guidelines for size and openings, as well as the City of Tampa zoning code.
Second? That would be me.
That was fast, quick draw. We have a motion, we have a second. Any comments for that? Okay. The applicant understands the motion that's been presented.
Can you turn your microphone off?
Dang it. I do that in the Zoom meetings all the time. The applicant understands the motion and that's being brought forward for the certificate of appropriateness.
I do.
Okay. Seeing no further discussion, all in favor?
Can you please raise your
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. You're approved.
Thank you guys very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And Ron, since we've got probably a long one here, let's do a little 5-minute recess and get everybody reset and then buckle in.
Yeah.
Hold on.
could stare at you for days. Why can't you try to behave? I know what you like. It's killing my, killing my, killing my. I don't want to go and sin. I got things I must begin, but I like it drive. It's killing my, killing my, killing my. This what you brought now is broke. Why do you want to provoke? Every line I've paved, you're killing my, killing my, killing my. Oh.
So good morning, Commissioners. Ron Vila, staff of Historic Preservation. The last case that we're going to review this morning is DLC 21-62 for the address of 1402 North 19th Street. There is a contributing structure that dates back to 1922. There are multiple zoning classifications attached to this request. There's YC6, YC7, and YC9. The request in front of you this morning is for a certificate of appropriateness, a 5-story residential new construction with rehabilitation to the existing structure with some site improvements. Most of the commissioners will see this project and know that it came in front of the board. It did receive a final on December 17th on 2020, and they've accumulated additional parcels, so the project has grown a little bit. As part of this request, I stated that there were multiple zoning classifications attached to it. I just want to read through those zoning classifications. It's some that we don't deal with on a daily basis. We focus more on the residential and the commercial core, the central core of 7th Avenue, which is YC1. So the 3 that are associated with this request is YC6, which is a community commercial. The code states that this subdistrict comprises of land devoted to general and intensive commercial use located on the southern fringe of the historic district, and which will provide a transition to the industrial uses south of the historic district. YC7 is a mixed use. YC7 subdistrict is allowed to develop the land uses that are consistent with the adopted future land use element of the Tampa Comprehensive Plan. It encourages maximum land development opportunities that are well designed, provide a balance for the mixed use development, including residential, commercial, office uses, which contribute to the approximate mixed use needed to ensure a valuable economic base for the historic district. And then YC9 is a site plan control district. This proposed district of YC9 subdistrict is allowed to develop the land use that are in conformance with the adopted future land use elements of the Tampa Comprehensive Plan while encouraging well-designed development. Having said that, we're going to go quickly through the photo presentation. Is this up on everybody's screen?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. The vicinity map. Once again, the red indicates the boundaries of the local district. This is on the southern fringe. So you have Adamo, then you have 2nd, and this project, the majority of the project is on 3rd Avenue. Outlined in the green is, this is the historic structure that's here. The development that you saw last year took up this land here. Part of the request is the demolition of this non-contributing structure. So the new footprint for the structure will come across and then bend to the north slightly. This will be a parking area, surface area. This will be a surface parking area. And this is a building that would encompass the rest of the required parking for this parcel. As presented today, there are no variances attached to this request. This is the contributing structure that which will be rehabilitated as part of this request. Just focusing on that very unique and important building. This is the non-contributing structure that will be removed. In the background, you see the historic building and then the land that will encompass some additional footprint. I came back to the Sanborn. We're going to focus now, we're going to look north and look at the surface parking on the corner of Angel Oliva, which is 18th Street and 4th Avenue. This is 3rd Avenue, this is 4th Avenue and Angel Oliva Senior. Surface parking is over here, which is indicated here. These structures obviously are not here. This is from 1929. That's looking at the surface lot here. Going back to your key or your reference point, we're going to now look at the surface parking in this area, which is indicated by this chain link fence. We'll take on a different vocabulary now through this presentation. And then lastly, looking at the concealed parking within this structure here. And this is off of 3rd Avenue and just to the west of 18th, which is Angel Oliva once again. And that's the structure here. That concludes the photo presentation, and Mr. Garcia will address the board.
Mario Pettis-Mackel from the City Attorney's Office. He needs to be sworn in, Madam Clerk.
Good morning. My name is Fali Garcia. I'm with Open Workshop for Architecture, and this is Jessica Shell, my partner. We're going to be presenting a PowerPoint presentation, so please, we can bring it up on the screen. Thank you. So as Ron said, we did come forward about a year ago to present this project back in December 2019. Half of the board saw this project. The other half, this would be a completely new presentation. At the time, we called it the 19th Street Apartments. The project at the time consisted of two wings, which is, we've labeled them A, B, and C here just for reference. Wing C, which is the contributing structure along 19th, and then Wing B, which was the new 5-story addition kind of at the center of the block along 3rd Avenue. Since the first certificate of appropriateness, which now seems like a completely different time, the development has grown, and now it's we're including a new wing to the west of the property, which is labeled as Building A. As well as the lot which is labeled 1, portion of that lot came forward as well as part of the first application, but we have now expanded that lot to include portion of where that wing A is located. And then there's currently a vacant property at the corner of 4th and Angel Oliva, which is currently being used as parking. We're enhancing that property, and it will be also an additional parking area for the development. What's shown as Lot 2 came forward last time. That has not changed. The approach to that property has not changed. We have an alternative parking approval for that property. And then what's labeled as Lot 3 will be a completely new site that nobody has seen yet. This is just going to be parking within an existing warehouse building. Although we're presenting today as a new project, most of what you'll see was previously reviewed and approved. And you know, as I go through the presentation, I'll try to point out those differences and what's remained the same, what's changed, and what is completely new. You'll see here, highlighted in yellow is the building footprint. The building consists of 102 units, and the combined parking is also 102 parking spaces. That's not, anything that's shown on the right-of-way is purely conceptual at this point. That's not, we're not presenting the right-of-way improvements as part of this approval. So Lot 1 will have 51 spaces, which is directly behind the building. Lot 2, and then Lot 2 and 3 would have the rest. So we are meeting the 1-to-1 ratio here. The building sits solely within the YC6 zoning lots. The lot at the corner of 4th and Angel Oliva is a YC7. The Lot 2 is YC6, and Lot 3 is what is within the YC9 zoning. I'll go over the site first, just to get everybody oriented, and we'll go through a couple of the components related to the site before we move to the building. As you can see, the parking is behind the structure. We wanted to make sure that we used the building to block parking as much as possible. We wanted this building to really interact with the streetscape. And then at the corner, like I mentioned, that lot is currently still being used as parking. We're going to improve that, and then there will be a small utility building on that lot. The utility building will follow some of the design characteristics of the building, of the main structure, as well as well as carrying some of the features that are seen throughout the district. It will be integrated with the fencing, which will not be vinyl fencing, and so that's the small utility structure there. Just wanted to point that out. And for landscaping, we'll be using the landscaping strategically throughout to buffer the vehicular use areas. And it will be coordinated, particularly on that lot in the corner of 4th and Angel Oliva, so that it has a dialogue with the future park that will be built across the street. Our design approach, was not just to create a project that was compatible with the historic urban form surrounding it, but we really wanted to create an inviting project that promoted walkability and have a stronger social interaction. You see here that this is the first ground floor plan. What's highlighted in pink are the common areas of the building. Starting from the left of the screen, that would be the main anchor of the project, and that's going to be really the main entrance, main lobby, and main lobby of the structure. Because the building is so long, it's really the length of the block along 3rd. We have a second entry kind of strategically placed at the dividing point between the existing structure and the new structure. And then we have another common space facing 19th within the historic structure of the building. As we move on to the second floor, the historic structure, again, like as we mentioned before, is only a 2-story building. So here, even though we're presenting them, and you'll see as we present the elevations, because of the length of the building, we're going to be looking at the design almost as 3 different buildings, but it's really one structure connected within. The 3rd floor, it starts only really being the new structure, and then so there will be some units being placed on the roof of the historic structure, but that will be covered by the tall parapet that currently exists. And then on the 5th floor, we have a slight setback on the new building as well. And here's the roof plan showing kind of our approach to the mechanical layout and the roof. Just as a quick reference, those mechanical units will not be visible from the street based on just the width of the building and the location of those units. So just to go over real quick the rehabilitation, our approach to this building really did not change since our previous application. We are proposing to fully restore this building and rehabilitate the structure. We are going to be reconfiguring the interior plans, but in terms of the exterior, other than we're going to be demoing some of the foreign elements such as the awnings and the fire escape, and then some of the other elements will remain such as the balcony structure and recovering some of the old doors and windows. There was one comment that came during our last presentation about the balcony, and we've started the encroachment process. We have the green light from TICO that there's not going to be any conflicts with any existing utilities by keeping and restoring this front balcony. Here's some of the demo scope depicted on the plan. Oh, that does not look good. We're missing. this is really showing some of the character-defining features of the building that we were going to salvage. And this was supposed to be the material page, which we have a loose sheet here that we can show if we need to go through that again. But again, this did not change from our previous presentation. And here's a quick rendering of what the building will look like once it's fully rehabilitated with a partial cross-section of that front facade facing 19th. Moving on to building wing B. This is where we start seeing some of the changes from our previous presentation. The facade facing 3rd Avenue is relatively the same with some minor differences. We did added a new row of windows. We didn't add a floor. It's just how, and I'll go through some of those differences, but materiality and design approach is the same. And this is some of the inspirations that we had used to drive the design of the project. Here's this plan kind of really shows you in context how the building sits. We have a very important building across from us. Is the Corral Cigar Factory building. This was a very important building for us. It's really, one of the tallest structures in Ybor City, and it has a very, very strong character. The repetition and the pattern was also very influential in our design approach. As you can see, we've used the pilaster rhythm to kind of inform how we designed that center structure. For us, each wing had an important role to play, and that role was also one of the main drivers of the design. Wing C, to the right of the screen, had a very important role being by preserving the history of the district. Wing B, which is the middle section, being right across from the Corral, really needed to create a symbiotic relationship with that very important building. And Wing A, which is kind of surrounded and being kind of in itself and in the corner, really carried the role of anchoring the development as a whole. So here's the elevation of the overall. And we're going to be talking about the middle section, which is highlighted here. This is a side-by-side comparison of what was presented before, which is the elevation below, and what we're presenting today. As you can see, the difference between the two today is that the first floor were two-story loft units with 2 floors above, which are the section with the brick and the kind of the repetitive window pattern. The 5th floor was slightly set back to break up the mass of the building at that center of the block. So you can see the proposed design today. We've converted the loft units, the 2-story loft units. We've made them into single-story units, and we've added a true 2nd floor, mainly because of how the adjacent structure was being developed. But the window pattern is the same, with the exception also that the windows themselves have grown to allow for more natural light into the space. But the brick fenestration size is exactly the same as it was presented before. Materiality also is exactly the same. You can see on the right the rendering side-by-side comparison of the 2 renderings there. Now, our strategy, building Wing B, which is the connecting point to the historic structure on the site, we've used a strategy that's been used all over the country in historic districts, where we are connecting the buildings with a corridor that's slightly set back. The building is also offset from the building roughly 4 feet to create kind of the illusion of 2 uniquely separate structures, even though they're connected at the rear. Here's a more detailed view at the front facade. Again, the first floor is still taller floors, 14 feet to the ceiling of that first floor, so it's a higher, still remains, so the approach is still the same. It's just not as high as it was before. I think it was something about 22 feet or something like that. And you can see how at the top we're still recessing that 5th floor, again, to break up that mass. The building will be constructed of a combination of concrete, wood, and a brick, true brick phrasing. Now, the rear of the building, or I guess the north facade of the building, is similar, but it's a little bit, carries a little bit more differences than we have presented before. It is still stucco as we did before, but the color is a little bit different. And we also saw the opportunity to add balconies, mainly because this north facade is facing what would be a lower scale residential neighborhood, and we thought that that made it a little bit more relatable. It also, we don't have to deal with the encroachment issues, and being that it's facing north, it also allowed us to take advantage of that soft northern light as well for each unit. The north facade does extend the length of both wings A and B, so we treat it a little bit different there. And at the right of the screen, that what you see in this portion of the piece of wing A that turns a 90-degree. Here's a closer look at that rear facade and a wall section, so you can see how these Juliet balconies are designed. And as we had talked on the site plan, we are using the bottom of the building strategically to park cars. Again, we have a very restricted site width, so we took advantage of that, and we have covered parking underneath that first floor of the building. This is really just to show that wing B turns the corner behind the wing C building. We're continuing that fenestration and the materiality and all that, so it's not just a blank wall. And for us, this is a good slide because we're really trying to maintain some alignments with the existing buildings, but also create uniquely different facades throughout. Again, it's just a very long street, and this really helped out with breaking up the scale throughout the project. Here we can see in the middle you have wing C and B in context. Obviously the existing building. Across you have the school, which is a similar scale, and the middle section of the new building is the same scale as the corral with the top floor setback. So you can see them here really in context. The material board, again, we have black windows. This is exactly the same as it was reviewed before. Metal railing painted black. We have integral color stucco for the columns, black trim detailing, and the brick facing, and then some of the hardware and lighting that we'll be using throughout the project. This is our reference for selecting the materiality of the project. This, to the left is an existing building along 7th Avenue. Moving on now to Wing A. Now this is a totally new project for everyone, or at least portion of the project for everyone. And you can see Wing A is really surrounded by a number of vacant properties, and catty corner to it, to the southwest, it's really directly facing the warehouse district. So we're taking a slightly different approach to the design. We're really looking at and taking cues from the warehouse district to dictate some of the design elements like the windows and some of the, even the scale of the project. Being that we can go 60 feet, we wanted to make sure that we were using references that were tall buildings within the district. So here are some of those that kind of dictated some of the design, that informed some of the design decisions that we made throughout. And here highlighted is going to be Wing A, just for reference. Now, Wing A, again, being that it's catty corner and facing the Port of Tampa and the warehouse district, we're using a window pattern that's more indicative of that approach. Because it's a zero lot line, and we still think that creating or having balconies is very important, especially in Florida, but we didn't want to create further encroachment issues there, so the balconies are inset the building. It actually gives the building depth rather than being a flat facade. So we have one that kind of highlights the main entrance of the building, and then as you turn the corner, one that terminates the structure itself. You can see here a little bit closer detail on this section, how that all plays out with the building. The front entrance is set back slightly. Now there is quite a bit of an elevation change between 19th and Angel Oliva, so you see that reflected. So as you come into the lobby, there is quite a bit of an elevation change, roughly 3 feet, that we have to contend with. And we have started the encroachment process, so we will have 2 awnings along 3rd Avenue for both entrances of both lobbies. The material palette is really the same as building wing B, with the exception of the brick and the mutton system that we're going to be using on the window system. And here's a reference back to what's been done in the district, and again, something that dictated our material selection for the building. There is a combination of brick and stucco throughout, so we wanted to make sure that we were also relatable to what's been historically done in the building, in the district. It's particularly 1621 East 4th Avenue. It's within 3 blocks of this project, so very similar building, 5 stories, stucco structure, and you can see some of the other historic structures throughout the, one historic structure and then one recently completed, the Hotel Hyatt on 7th Avenue. This is the approved material palette for Ybor City, and we're kind of landing within this 6 color combinations throughout. We're in a unique position here for this project because most high-density multifamily projects in the district have been developed in the fringes of the district, and usually have to cross main roads to get closer to the core of the building. So this is really one of its first buildings, high density, that's a bit closer to the core of the district. And because of it, we believe that it will play an important role, social role in Ybor City by promoting a vibrant street life, promoting also local businesses, and hopefully promoting also new businesses to come along. Thank you, and now I'll take some questions from the board.
Thank you.
Good morning, Commissioners. Ron Avila, I'm staff with Historic Preservation. Moving to the staff report section, the staff finds this application is consistent with the Ybor City design guidelines. Initially, when we worked on the first project, we focused on the scale and massing, and then with the incorporation of the additional land, we continued that conversation. So in breaking the building massing vertical and horizontally to meet our criteria was achieved as presented this morning. Under conditions on your staff report on page 4 and page 5, the agent was working on the final solution for solid waste. If he could address that a little bit more thoroughly once we get into question and answers. He did address that there was an encroachment on the historic building that has already been discussed, but if there's any additional encroachments, that process should take place immediately. It's a long process. To discuss the surface parking lots, the site issues are more of a pedestrian experience, and on the staff report, we talked about the surround around the parking areas, the fencing, the lighting, to talk about or touch upon the scoring and some of the hardscape that's associated in those areas. As indicated on the rendering shown today, the mechanicals and the generators are on the roof. Talk about the location of those on the roof and the visibility and the immediate vicinity of the pedestrians, and if any screening is going to be used. And then go through multiple wall sections and just call out from top to bottom as you go through. If a final is being sought out this morning, which I believe it is, if he has enough information for the board to go in that direction, that the final material selection and colors be explored in more depth with staff. Having said that, that concludes this portion of my staff report, and I'm here to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Ron. We have the opportunity for public comment. I don't see anybody else in the audience. So we can move forward with commissioners asking questions regarding the project.
Yes, thank you for the presentation, very thorough. I believe you talked about, I can't remember, they were mentioned as lots 1, 2, 3, or A, B, and C, but the third lot, that's the warehouse for the use for parking. Is that warehouse just staying as is and just going to be the inside used for parking, or what's the?
Yeah, correct. The intent for that is the warehouse would be, renovated, but we're not going to change it. We maybe update the doors and everything, but yeah, the warehouse will stay. We're not demoing that.
Okay, great. And then could you bring up, I think one of the things we're kind of interested is maybe a site plan and just talk about like the hardscaping or like the hardscaping around the building and talking about maybe any of the scoring patterns for
Sure.
any paving and that kind of stuff.
Actually, let's bring that up on the. Oh, okay. Well, there you go. Let's go back. This sheet? Or one more?
Let's see.
This one?
Yeah, okay, we can talk of this one, and can we maybe just go from, maybe starting at like maybe the southeast side and just kind of going around the building, just talking about like the streetscape and sort of the landscaping. I know you kind of had pointed out some of the plants and stuff around the parking, I think more towards like the northwest corner. But maybe sort of where on, yeah, towards the main facade of the building and talking about sort of any of the hardscapes there.
Yeah, so, historically in the Ybor City district, landscaping has never really been a kind of a focal point, but we think it is to a certain extent important, especially because for this building, particularly in the middle section, those units at the ground level are going to directly interface with the public, as you have a front porch. So we think that creating a small buffer, we are going to create a small buffer in front of those units. There's going to be a small buffer also along the historic structure. The sidewalk is going to be a concrete sidewalk. We'll work with staff to make sure that we are proposing the correct scoring pattern on that. Like I said, there is going to be quite a bit of an elevation change between 19th and 3rd, so we have to work out some details with our civil engineers before we can fully detail those things out, but I think that those are components that I think we can really work out with the staff as we go around the building. Really the same approach, and then the fencing material for the corner lot on 4th and Angel Oliva would be a combination of using a pilaster system with metal fencing in between, and then like I said, that would be somewhat integrated with the utility building as well, so it kind of continues that rhythm.
And so where the units are sort of inset, where there's, I guess, sort of a little sort of porch or patio area,
right?
What sort of treatment will those have?
So we'll, right now that's going to be a concrete surfacing. We might be able to have the opportunity to include some paving on the front there, but again, some of those things I think we can probably work with your staff to really make sure that we're being consistent there.
Okay, great. And then how much of the grade change is there again from 3rd to 19th?
It's about 3 feet.
3 feet.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It's really more significant. It's pretty leveled right about to the middle of the property, and then the last, the west end really drops quite a bit. So.
Okay, great. And then maybe could you just go through a wall section of the new wing A of the building, just to go over the newest portion in a little more detail?
So where the windows are, it's going to be very similar to this wall section, with the exception that the the top floor will not be recessed. So this is the wall section for the middle building. So if we cut a wall section through a window on wing A, it would be very similar to this. In fact, the window sizes are the same. It's really the width that's different, and then the top floor is not recessed. And really, the section that we showed here, which, oh, I'm going the opposite way. The section that we showed here is really the one that's significantly different from anywhere else in the building, which is at the main entry, where we have balconies at the top, kind of highlights the entrance, creates a more of a sense of entry, and and then we have an awning that protrudes. We've pushed the entry back so that the awning encroachment is not as significant. So it's just little design details there, and it's again to create a little bit of depth and more of a sense of entry to that building there.
And then does the brick wrap around into the
balcony? Yes, they
Yes,
do.
the
So
balconies,
you can see, I believe we can see that here. It's a little bit too dark in there, but yeah, the brick does wrap around into the balconies.
Okay. Great, that's all the questions I have now. Thank you.
Just a couple questions. This is a great presentation, pretty thorough, pretty complete. And I commend you on the restoration of the contributing structure. I think I might have heard wrong, but the generators are going to be on the roof?
Right now, we have no generators.
Oh, you have
It's
no
just
generators.
it's just the condensing units and vents, and all the mechanical equipment will be on the roof.
Okay, and
Yeah.
what's the utility building for?
I'm sorry?
The utility building?
The utility building is for waste management.
Yeah, okay.
Being that we have an increased density, we ran into some issues with transportation. Originally, we had, on the previous presentation a year ago, we were accessing the site through 3rd Avenue. In fact, if we can bring back that PowerPoint back up. Go back. Well, before, when it was only the middle structure, excuse me, I need some water. We had the entry to the site through the street. As we added the last lot, we had the entry through 4th, but meaning that 4th is a main corridor. We had some issues with the driveway and distance from Angel Oliva, so we had to switch the driveway back to the Angel Oliva site. So that created some issues with the location of the solid waste enclosure. So we ended up, we worked through with transportation, and that was the location that we had come up with as the best location for the trash bins. And it could serve as a utility building for service and servicing the maintenance and all of those things as well.
Okay, thank you. No more
Yeah.
questions.
So actually, staying on this this rendering here, you're showing angled parking on 3rd Avenue on the south side. Are you renovating the street there?
That's the intent. It's purely conceptual at this stage, and that's not really being reviewed right now.
I don't think
on the
that's
Barrio.
within our purview, but
Right,
I don't
right.
think.
But that
that's
is the
gonna-
intent. If we do have a plan A, B, and C for that road. This is the preferred option. I think that it would really enhance the streetscape there. But if not, we do have options that really do not interfere with the building design.
Yeah, I don't think that's gonna happen, but I just,
Yeah.
that's a separate battle to work out with the city, but
Sure.
I don't see that happening there. So these windows, previous iteration, you had basically two rows of windows. They appeared larger, but you said they were the same size. Now that's an integrated aluminum window with, where the darkness is shown, that's like a solid infill, but it's all one masonry opening, if you will, right?
Yeah, it's actually a little deceiving because you have a window within, can we bring that PowerPoint back up? Sorry.
And they vary a little bit, right? Some of them are to the
Yeah,
left,
so
some are to the right.
it's a bit deceiving because you see the actual window sits within a stucco shadow box within the brick. These windows are actually larger than the previous windows. The
Okay.
previous windows seem larger because the window itself was smaller and that stucco band was thicker.
So is that like the dark gray that you see around the window? Like I'm looking at that first window, that L, back
Correct.
reverse L. Is that stucco or is that aluminum?
No, that's stucco.
That's
Yeah,
stucco. Okay.
Yeah, so it's a stucco recessed portion. And then obviously because being a true brick facing, it stands proud of that face.
Okay. And that cornice that goes along the first floor, is that like a metal coping there? Is that aluminum?
So
or is
because the first floor is a concrete podium, that's portion of that would be a concrete detail throughout that would be painted.
Okay. All three step backs there, or is it just some of
Correct.
it's stuck?
Yeah, correct. And that's a roughly 2 feet, 2 feet thick.
Okay. You showed one elevation there comparing this elevation of B, which is compared to the Corral building and the spacing.
Oh.
I don't know if you want to bring that back up. And I know I'm trying to get caught up because, I saw there's minor revisions to building number B.
So you want the side-by-side compare
past that,
this
two
one?
back.
Yeah. Or
Go back one to the Corral.
here?
Yeah. So your column spacing, I see what you're trying to do to pick up the thickened pilasters there of the Corral building, but it's like, I don't know if it's meant to be in direct alignment or not, but your ground floor columns are kind of shifted off there. And I'm trying to figure out, is that due to the parking dimensions on the backside?
Correct.
So that kind of drives that, so you
Correct. Yeah, so there's
you
a...
offset those a little bit on purpose?
Yeah, there's multiple things that we have to contend with. Obviously, parking is a big one at the rear of the building, and so we really have to find the best place for those columns. We can't. We're really restricted here. Not only with the dimensions between the columns, but also how many parking spaces we can fit within them, and so on and so forth.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of what I assumed. I just wanted to ask that question, because that's a nice precedent. I mean, I think you're doing what you can there to carry through the rhythm of that historic building. I think all three buildings really relate nicely, to what you're doing there. The mechanical building, you said it's more for like solid waste storage. It
Yeah,
looks like you have one overhead door that's going in
Correct.
there. It's like a coiling overhead door.
Correct.
Okay, and then you've got some greenscape to do the other two units. Was that previously approved in your
No,
flyer?
that one's new. That's
Okay.
new. Yeah.
Okay, and lot 3, we talked about that warehouse building, that you're gonna make some interior renovations to park there. We didn't see any elevations of changes. You said you may update the door there or some facade.
The intent is not to
improvement?
change that warehouse. If we have to update the door, it'll be the same approach, same design
Okay.
approach.
And what
for
is it? What is
building.
that door?
It's a coiling roll-up door.
Okay, is
yeah.
it powered?
Right now, it's not, it's mechanical, but it will be, it would have to be powered,
Okay.
yes, yeah. It'll be a secure building, secure parking, yeah.
Okay. And I really like the change that you made to Wing B by adding that third row of windows. I think that really speaks more to the rhythm of the Corral and
Yeah.
the adjacent building, and I look forward to having this project there.
Thank you. Thank you.
So, nice work. That's all I have.
I have no questions.
Thank you for a thorough presentation. I'd like to ask you a couple more questions. Can you bring up, just picking up on that solid waste portion, can you bring that up so we can just check on that again? Because we went by it real quick in terms of what that is, because I didn't pick up on the is there a coiling door on that one?
Yeah, there's a coiling. Can we bring the PowerPoint up again? Not sure if,
No, they'll switch, there it is.
okay, cool. So the bottom, the west elevation, which is what faces Angel Oliva, has the coiling door, and we are proposing between the pattern of the pilasters, proposing a kind of a green screen to soften that. On the top one, the east elevation, which faces the parking, that's our parking lot. We're still carrying that green screen around. And on the north elevation, which actually faces 4th Avenue, again, we have the green screen there again, but they will also have some trees and stuff in front of that, again, to block it from the street. And it is in line with the fencing as well, so we kind of continue that rhythm of the pilasters throughout.
Understood. And if you can show the north elevation of the project, I have a question about. Okay, so here, the north elevation screen, you have the wing B and the wing A, and what I'm trying to understand is when you turn the corner with wing A, when you see this north elevation, the wing B and the wing A are all the same material.
So if we can bring the PowerPoint back up, I think a better slide would be the rendering showing that west facade. Right here. So that portion you see on the elevation that's really carries through, that's the same, that's kind of recessed back, that's kind of tucked away in the building, and you don't really see that facade unless you're standing on 4th and really only from the 3rd floor up. So we didn't see, I guess I'm not, I don't know if I'm answering your question or not, but that's the building. Wing A turns the corner, is still the brick, and then it's being capped by the volume that has the balconies with the gray stucco features, and then it turns the corner again into the site on that area where they have the balconies.
And what does the interior courtyard look like? I'm trying to determine and understand where the materiality in building A changes, because it's taking on a little bit of building B.
Yeah, so here this is the east. So as the building turns around from the west, north, and then east, so you still have some of that that grayish stucco. Then we bring the brick back up, and this is where the second means of egress, the stair is, which are typically kind of a solid volume. So we added the brick there to give it a little more interest. And then we end at what would be, I guess, the light beige north facade with all the balconies. And that color is really meant to be similar color to what would be at the historic structure, which is a lighter beige color. So there's a reference back to that building.
Okay, so that interior corner, though, the building B facade just comes into that interior corner, right?
Correct. Yeah.
And can you go back around to the, well, we can start here. On this particular elevation, the inset there catches my eye because the little band of brick that goes over that opening, it seems like, I think you resolved the corner and its balcony detailing more effectively than this one, because I think that by tucking it back and making that brick do that, there's a little extra tension in that cornice that I don't think you wouldn't have that typically historically, I don't think. But can you go to the other balcony? Yeah, so on the west elevation, you've kind of distinguished, the balcony from the masonry, and there could be a potential there to change how that front works too, to where you break that cornice, or pull that other unit out. I'm not sure what the solution is there, but it looks kind of tenuous across that front, in my mind, but that's the south elevation there. I wanted to see how that worked. Let's see the cornice. And are there any stair towers that go up and above the 5th floor?
Yes, there's 2 of them. We can go back here. You can see one of them peeking through kind of at the middle, where the existing meets the new, peeking through at the back, at the rear. So it's not a full story. It's just, it just protrudes just enough.
Okay, so we don't have a whole other story.
No.
Occasionally for some penthouses up
Correct,
there.
yeah.
Okay. Those are my questions. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
You have a little bit of time, 5 minutes, to discuss or rebut anything that you've heard.
No, I think you have some, just really your comment about the entrance and the brick at the top. We explored multiple options there. We broke, we kind of stopped the cornice at the top, and try to make that seem more as its own volume. That it really kind of made the building look a little strange. When we did that, we've eliminated that small brick banding that you referred to as well, and then that kind of looked a little strange. We've looked at different options. I think that there's a little bit of room for improvement there, and we'll definitely be looking at that. We just wanted to let you know we did explore quite a bit of options on this, particularly on that entrance.
Understood. Thank you.
Thank you.
So we'll close the public hearing and discuss the case.
I think this will be a great project. I think the revisions and the addition are very much in spirit and in line with the previous approval that we gave, and so it will be great.
I think it's a great project. Good job.
I voted for approval of the first one, but I don't think I'm going to vote for approval of the second one. And I think the scale has grown too large. You're 4 blocks, you're in the center of Ybor City, 4 blocks south of 7th Avenue. Very prime. The gentleman was calling it the warehouse district. It's not always going to be the warehouse district. Or it may not. I think the way the project has been presented now with its scale, it's going to be great for the first decade. But the second and third decades, I don't know. And the reason I say that is because now that the parking requirements are so large, there's a southwest and a northeast lot on either side of 18th Street that are dedicated to surface parking. And they're just not regular lots, they're corner lots, and they're in the center. So what kind of pedestrian experience, what kind of commercial growth, what kind of anything are we going to get when it's available to put it down there when we're using lots, prime lots, instead of putting in a small 4-story apartment building on a corner and having retail down below and so forth. We've got parking for this monstrosity. I think they've gone too big, and I don't think it's the right thing. I'm more than happy to see 100 new apartments and residents move in and support businesses, including my own. But for the long-term benefit of Ybor City, this project in that place, to me, is too big.
Well, I think if we look at this, and there's really 6 parts to this, and some of it we have action on, some of we don't. The contributing structure, I think the renovation work there is fine. I like the renovations to Wing B and changing that up, and I'll probably bring legal in for some questions later of, hey, what kind of motion are we actually making here? Do we, what are we wrapping in with like Wing B, since it's already got a CA? Are we just saying it's okay with these mods, and then, making a motion on Wing A as a new CA. But I think overall, I think, you know, the spirit of the project works, and the precedents are picked up. I like the rhythm of these elements. To Commissioner Schiller's point about, you know, getting too dense, it seems like this previous iteration went through some, there was a variance request to reduce the number of parking spaces. You guys came up with a solution, you know, based on these YC districts, parking is required. Now, if you do something like this, you wouldn't be able to do it in YC1, but, you know, if we look at the same situation in YC1, there's 0 parking requirements. So there's some inconsistencies here that we're trying to balance here. I think the applicant has made an excellent effort to incorporate all the things, including the parking. I'm not a big fan of having the parking across the street. I'd rather see it on the lot, but I understand why you did that. And I think that's all appropriate for the size of this project. Is it getting a little bit too big? I don't know. I mean, it's a full block project, but I think all the elements are there. I mean, you break down the block into 3 different parts, you know, based on the contributing structure. The rhythm works well, the height works well. You're certainly within your means of what you've done here. You've made good moves with recessing the windows and creating the brick relief. You created a nice plinth and a nice rhythm to the project. I like the project. I think it's very solid, and I think there's a lot of nice setbacks to try to break up that extended length of the block through setting back a walkable pedestrian, you know, alcove, if you will, on the first floor there, setting back the 5th level of apartments. And I think the elements that you picked up on within this building are evident in the district. So I have no issues with the project. You know, the parking isn't a great situation, but I understand it as a solution to the design problem that we have here. Yeah, that's all I have for now.
Okay, thank you. I share a lot of the sentiments that are being expressed. I think the project is nicely scaled, nicely proportioned, well thought out. I do think it's a large project. It's my understanding that the parking that you have on these corner lots, as well as inboard and remote, are all controlled by the owner. So in the case that, you know, this project, you know, necessitates or makes other projects near it on these lots possible or desirable, there's a market-based incentive for them to figure out where that parking goes in order to relocate it. It's part of the project. We're not asking for any variances here in what's being presented, just an overall CA for the project and its parking arrangements. So I think that, you know, I think that the property and its value will sort itself out over those 20 or 30 years, and the parking will, you know, probably move to adjust maybe into a future lot of some development or some kind of parking structure. But I think the market will sort that portion out. And by playing by all the rules that are currently in place and not asking for a variance, I think that, you know, it's important to have those considerations in hand, but ultimately the owner and applicant have the ability to step forward and ask for what they're asking for. And I think that they're asking for it in a fairly well-packaged presentation and something that's going to be an asset to the district. So I think that we need to figure out what kind of motion we want. Is there anything we want to see again? Is there anything that we want to condition to give staff the kind of the bullet points that we're interested in, so that when it is constructed, we're happy with the outcome. So I'll leave it to somebody to make a motion to figure out how do we turn this project over in terms of developing a motion, at least.
Kamaria Pettis-Malco from the City Attorney's Office. Just for clarification purposes, this is a request for a certificate of appropriateness for the 5-story residential building and site improvements. So it'll include what he's, the little modifications that he improved, or, you know, suggestions And Mr. Vila, do you wanna reiterate?
Yeah, to elaborate on what Camario was leading towards, is when we first reviewed this project, there was substantial changes to the approval that was already granted. So instead of taking that upon administratively and just looking at the additional footprint, we thought it was important to come back to the board in totality to look at the complete project. So you're looking at the rehabilitation to the historic building for all the new construction. The prior approval doesn't fit into this request. So look at it as all new moving forward, and then the parking elements that are associated with it.
Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay. Are we at the moment to ask for a motion? Okay.
We're getting there. We're close. Is there,
Okay.
I mean, is there any other discussion among commissioners to try to determine if, you know, if this is something that we're going to put forward as a final, as a preliminary? What conditions are we interested in? How can we guide staff if we're going to, in order to continue to shepherd the project to completion?
Can we bring the site plan up on the screen?
Can we please bring the PowerPoint back up?
I think that he sees that.
It's already up. It's already up. You just have to start.
Oh, I just have to
yeah,
start, oh,
yeah.
okay. Which site plan would you like to see? This one here?
That's fine.
Okay.
I mean, I think, you know, I made a point before on the south side of East Third Avenue with the angled parking. I don't think that's within our purview, so I think that needs to be excluded.
As indicated on the rendering, that was a conceptual plan and a long-term solution for some of the parking challenges, but anything in the right-of-way is not reviewed this morning.
Am I missing the boat?
No, just
No, everybody's
trying to.
Okay.
trying to
I mean,
make sure we
because
got
to
you know, I
include
guess
everything.
that is, you know, a potential indicator of a thorough presentation. You know, if we're trying
know.
to, if we're trying to, you know, make sure that nothing gets by and that we don't have a record of it, at least in the public hearing or in what you presented. You know, there's a lot that is deferred to staff in terms of finishes, and you've presented those colors, you presented those. So if there's any other concerns that we have, we need to condition those appropriately, or make a motion just to move it forward with some sort of CA motion.
Yeah, I mean, I think the presentation in general is, you know, thorough and addresses all our concerns. We didn't, you know, specifically talk about Lot 2, but per my notes, there's no changes to that. So I think, you know, and as, you know, Camila and Ron talked about, this is all a holistic totality. This is the new CA that will govern the whole project for all three parts of the building and 3 parking lots. So, you know, I think, yeah, I think specifically I'd want the south side of East Third excluded with the angled parking there, but you know, that's not really in our purview. Any renovations to Lot 3 to that building obviously need to come back before the BLC. I don't have any other specific conditions besides those.
I mean, for Lot 3, if they're just talking about changing out the doors, I'm comfortable with, you know,
Yeah.
having
Yeah.
staff see that and say, yes, that's a good door or not. I mean, I would imagine they're gonna devote as little capital to that as possible to you know, get the parking there that you need, and then, you know, look for opportunities, you know, in the site and other amenities to, you know, spend some of that money.
All right, I'll go ahead and make a Motion then, so for a final approval with conditions, move to grant certificate of appropriateness for the drawings and documents presented at this public hearing in BLC 21-62 for the property located at 1402 North 19th Street with the following conditions: that the applicant work with staff to finalize any hardscape scoring around the building along with planting selections. They work with staff with any for the final color selections around the building, and they work with staff to if there are any changes to the warehouse that it will be used for parking, if there are any exterior changes to that building. Are there any other conditions that we wanted to add to that motion? No? Okay, because based upon the finding of fact, and the proposed project is consistent with the Ybor City guidelines in the city of Tampa, and for the following reasons, that it meets the design criteria for new construction and additions, for exterior rehabilitations, and the Secretary of Interior standards for rehabilitation.
We have a motion with conditions. Need a second.
Second.
We have a motion with conditions and a second. Is the applicant aware of and agreeing to the conditions that are established with this motion?
I do.
Okay. All in favor of the motion and its conditions?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Thank
We're
you.
done.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Time this morning.
And we will see everybody next time.
Thank you.
You are slowly moving out of sight. We've been lost, caught in the night. If only you could see me now. Trying to make it through it all somehow. I remember it all like yesterday. Looking back, you won't fade away. I know it won't be like the start. Just been wondering when you change your heart.